Welcome to Aviafly, the YouTube history channel with aircraft, airlines, and aviation podcasts. German, Italian, and French language terms appear in this podcast. We can't pronounce these terms correctly. It remains with an English pronunciation, which the listener may forgive us and hopefully can take with great humor. Today's topic: Aeritalia G.91, R, G.91, T, and G.91, Y. The Fiat G.91 is a lightweight tactical ground attack aircraft designed for simplicity and agility. It is a subsonic aircraft powered by a single Bristol Siddeley Orpheus turbojet engine. A vital function of the plane is its short-field capability, having been constructed with a rugged airframe to withstand the demands imposed by high-intensity operations and the use of semi-prepared airstrips. The landing gear is furnished with low-pressure tires for the same purpose. The standard mission of the G.91 was the attack of targets within a 170-mile radius of its base with a typical loiter time of 10 minutes, traveling at maximum speed in the combat area and traversing at cruise speeds. The G.91 originates in the NATO-organized NATO Basic Military Requirement No. 1 competition in 1953, which sought a light fighter bomber to be adopted as standard equipment across the air forces of the various NATO nations. The G.91 was designed to this specification by the Italian engineer Giuseppe Gabrielli, hence the G designation. The competition was intended to produce an aircraft that was light, small, expendable, equipped with primary weapons and avionics, and capable of operating with minimal ground support. These specifications were developed for two reasons. The first was the nuclear threat to large air bases. Much cheaper aircraft could be better dispersed, and the other was to counter the trend toward larger and more expensive aircraft. Specific technical requirements were: a takeoff distance of 3,610 feet over a 49-foot obstacle, the ability to operate from semi-prepared grass airstrips or roads, Mach 0.95 speed, a range of 170 miles with 10 minutes over target, and a maximum weight of 2,200 kilograms and maximum weight of 4,700 kilograms. The equipment requirements included protection for the pilot, fuel tanks, and armored protection. There were also options of alternative arrangements such as 4 12.7mm machine guns or 2 20mm or 30mm autocannons. These operational requirements were not easy to meet at the time. At the beginning of development, the Bristol Siddeley Orpheus turbojet solved the challenge of creating an engine that met lightness, reliability, ease of maintenance, and power requirements. This engine was developed with the substantial support of the U.S. Mutual Weapons Development Program. The Orpheus engine powered 9 of the 10 designs submitted to the competition. A special advisory group for aeronautical research and development, abbreviated to AGRD, conducted extensive evaluations to evaluate the bids that various aircraft manufacturers submitted in response. The designs were required within 2 months of the competition. At that time, an assortment of submissions was made, mainly by European companies. Besides the G.91, these included the Northrop N-156, the Dassault Mystère 26, the Sud-Est Baroudeur, the Airforce Sagittario II, and the Breguet BR-1001 Taon. On March 18, 1953, these submitted designs formally began to be assessed by the AGRD committee under Theodor von Karman. The initial project selection process took 18 months to complete. On June 3, 1955, it was announced that the Fiat G.91 had been selected as the design with the most promise. As a result of the G.91 selection, an immediate order was received for 3 prototypes and a total of 27 pre-production aircraft. Fiat quickly set about developing the concept to the prototype phase. Noticeable changes in the design occurred during this phase, such as increases in the aircraft's maximum weight due to additional equipment and structural strengthening measures. On August 9, 1956, the prototype G.91 conducted its maiden flight at the Caselle Airfield in Turin, in Italy. It was flown by Chief Test Pilot Riccardo Bignamini. Accordingly, the G.91 had achieved a 7-month head start over the Dassault prototype and was almost a year ahead of the Breguet Ta'an. An intensive series of test flights followed the type's maiden flight. These were not without setbacks. The most severe problem discovered during these was the presence of aeroelastic vibrations, leading to a series of investigative flights to resolve this condition. On February 20, 1957, during a test flight intended to explore the limits of the aircraft's speed-load envelope, difficulties led to the destruction of the first G.91 prototype. The cause of the prototype's loss was linked to problems encountered with the horizontal control system, which had led to structural failure. This led to the tail assembly being subjected to rigorous testing to identify the cause. The re-engineering work that had been performed to cure the vibration problem was pervasive and resulted in the second prototype being fitted with a larger tail, a 6 cm higher canopy, and the addition of a ventral fin. The second prototype had other modifications, including installing a full armament and a more powerful Orpheus engine. In July 1957, the second prototype performed its first flight. It was not immediately sent to participate in the final evaluation process. The third and fourth G.91 prototypes were later sent to France to continue evaluating flights. The final selection of the competing designs was planned for late 1957. In September 1957, the three rival aircraft types met for evaluation trials in France. The Italian aircraft is claimed to have delivered an impressive performance during these trials. In January 1958, the Fiat G.91 was declared the competition's winner. In April 1958, following a meeting of NATO defense ministers, an agreement was formed that the G.91 would be the first NATO lightweight strike fighter and that it was to be followed in 1961 by a so-called developed version of the Breguet Ta'an. 1 month later, a production meeting was scheduled to discuss the production of the aircraft with financial support from the United States. The Americans would provide some of the finance for the French, German, and Italian aircraft. The defense ministers reached an agreement to order 50 aircraft for each country. Given the considerable economic and commercial interests at stake, there was controversy surrounding this decision. After the loss of the first G.91 prototype, the French government preferred to pursue the development of the locally designed project named Etendard instead. The British government ignored the competition to concentrate on Hawker Hunter production for the same role. The Italian government had elected to order the G.91 for the Italian Air Force before the results of the competition were known. These pre-production machines would later serve for many years with the Italian aerobatic team, the Frecce Tricolori, designated as the G.91 PAN. By 1957, Fiat Aviazione was establishing the first production line for the G.91 at their facility at Turin Aeritalia Airport in Piedmont. Fiat constructed 174 G.91s of different variants for Italy, along with an additional 144 G.91R/3 variants for West Germany. 50 had been ordered by Greece and Turkey and were later cancelled. The first order was for 50 aircraft from Aeritalia, Dornier, and other German manufacturers with a demand for 232 machines, which was later increased to 294. The German Air Force also bought 44 G.91T/32C trainers, and another 22 were produced in Germany, ending production in 1972. On February 20, 1958, the first pre-production G.91 conducted its maiden flight. In August 1958, the 103mo Gruppo 5 Aerobrigata, a light tactical fighter group, was formed to work on the operational evaluation of the aircraft, initially based at Pratica di Mare Air Force Base. In 1959, the 103mo were transferred to Frosinone Airport to trial the austere basing capabilities of the G.91, including operating from various terrain. The unit also performed exercises in the vicinity of Venice, such as at Maniago and Campo Formido, in the presence of NATO officials. During this stage of the trials, German pilots also flew the aircraft. The German order involved a production run of 294 G91s that were domestically constructed in Germany under a license production arrangement by so-called Flugzeug Union South, a consortium of former competitors Messerschmitt, Heinkel, and Dornier. Messerschmitt produced the forward fuselage and tail assembly. Dornier manufactured the center fuselage along with final assembly and flight testing. Heinkel fabricated the wing. The G91 is the first combat aircraft manufactured in Germany since the Second World War. On July 20, 1961, the first German-built G91 conducted its first flight from Oberpfaffenhofen airfield. Aeritalia also negotiated a comprehensive license manufacturing agreement for the Orpheus engine that powered the type. Messier Bugatti Doughty produced the aircraft's undercarriage. In 1961, the next operational unit to be formed in Italy was 14mo Gruppo Seconda Aerobrigata. In 1961, the next operational unit to be formed in Italy was the so-called 14mo Gruppo Seconda Aerobrigata. This unit shifted its role to tactical support because its groups were 14mo, 103mo, and 13mo. All of them were based at Treviso Sant'Angelo. The G91 was also considered by several nations, including Austria, Norway, and Switzerland. In early 1961, 4 aircraft were shipped to the United States to participate in a formal evaluation program for the United States Army. These aircraft were subjected to several evaluation trials, most of which occurred in Alabama and New Mexico. The U.S. Army studied using the type as a so-called forward air control aircraft. However, the service subsequently relinquished all fixed-wing aircraft operations to the United States Air Force. Thus, the prospective G91 procurement was not pursued. In September 1960, the German Luftwaffe received their first 2 Fiat-built G91 R/3 aircraft. 5 more aircraft were delivered to testing site 61 for trials, with subsequent deliveries being allocated to the 53rd Reconnaissance Group based at Erding, near Munich, along with Weapons School 50. In July 1961, the first Dornier-built G91 performed its first flight. The R-type equipped for newly formed light attack wings, often being used to replace older aircraft such as the American-built Republic F-84F Thunderstreak. In October 1961, the 53rd Reconnaissance Group of Luftwaffe became the first operational G91 unit to achieve active status. In late May 1962, this same unit carried out its first operational training flights. During 1962 and 1963, the Luftwaffe conducted a series of trials to determine the type's capabilities in terms of austere and unfavorable climate performance, including an overseas deployment in Algeria to test the G91's versatility and operational efficiency within such climate conditions. An additional 45 G91T/3 Fiat-built 2-seat trainer aircraft were ordered for the Luftwaffe. The first 35 were allocated to Weapons School 50. In early 1961, Weapons School 50 began its first training courses for pilot instructors. Of these, 22 aircraft were built by Dornier between 1971 and 1973. These variants were used to train weapons systems officers for the F-4 Phantom. A special reconnaissance version with photographic equipment was built for high-speed armed reconnaissance flights, which flew for the first time in 1959 as the Fiat G.91 R/1, and carried 3 cameras with lenses of 70 mm focal length in the nose for forward and aft photography. From a high altitude, it could also take vertical photographs. It was first put into service by the Italian Air Force but also interested the U.S., which acquired 10 of these aircraft in 1961-62. On September 6, 1961, the first G91 R/4 was delivered to the Hellenic Air Force for evaluation. This variant, of which 25 aircraft were intended to be delivered to both Greece and Turkey, employed the same armament as the .91 R/1 version, while using the equipment of the R/3 variant. However, both Greece and Turkey would ultimately not induct any G91s. These aircraft were passed on to Germany's inventory instead. Still, they were deemed to be unsuitable for operational use. Alternatively, these were used as training aircraft and were operated solely by Weapons School 50. When the initial training program was completed, all ARA/4 aircraft were retired in 1966, and 40 surviving airframes were sold to Portugal. Other aircraft of this variant remained in Germany and were transferred to ground instructional use or for static displays at recruitment presentations. It has been claimed that the Luftwaffe had intended to equip a further 4 wings with the G.91 AR/3. However, initial operating experience with the type had allegedly left the Luftwaffe disappointed with the aircraft's performance. Thus, the intended further orders for the class were cut. Several Luftwaffe G.91s were emblazoned with a pig emblem. This has been interpreted as a comment on the aircraft's lackluster performance. During 1964, the pre-production aircraft of the 103 IMO Gruppo was replaced by production standard G.91 AR/1 combat aircraft. Thus, 16 of the pre-production aircraft were converted for service with the Italian aerobatic team, the Frecce Tricolori. In late 1964, the first batch of two-seater G.91 T/1 aircraft, which had lengthened fuselage to accommodate an additional seat for training purposes, was delivered to the Amendola Flying School for advanced jet training. These aircraft were used to exercise further pilots that had recently graduated from the Ermachi MB326 jet trainer. In 1965, Portugal attempted to purchase 100 surpluses and Canadian-built Sabre Mk6 from West Germany. Instead, it was offered 40 G.91 AR/4s, those that were intended for Turkey and Greece. In return, Germany wanted to have permission to use an airbase at Beja in Portugal for training. The G.91s arrived at Portuguese Guinea in 1966. They equipped Esquadra 121 Tigris with rockets, napalm, and bombs to counter the so-called PIGC rebels. These became a threat for Portuguese air superiority when the PIGC was supplied with Soviet-made Strela 2 manpads in 1973. 2 G.91s were destroyed by missiles on the 25th and the 28th of March 1973. A further 2 G.91s were shot down by missiles within 3 days. On January 31, 1974, a final G.91 was hit by a missile. The G.91s were deployed to Mozambique in 1968 to equip Esquadra 502 Jaguars. Later, they moved to Nacala with a second squadron, Esquadra 702 Scorpions, formed in September 1970 to fly against so-called Frelimo troops. Frelimo received Strelas in 1973. However, unlike other countries, the Portuguese in Mozambique didn't lose any aircraft to missiles with Chinese support. Serial number 5429 was the only G.91 that was destroyed in combat in Mozambique. In 1973, with the United Nations weapons embargo against Portugal, the Air Force faced problems purchasing different numbers of close air support aircraft. An attempt was made to acquire more Fiat G.91s from Germany by having Dornier disassembling the plane and then selling them as spare parts to Switzerland and Spain. These spare parts would be later sold to Portugal and assembled locally with different serial numbers. However, the deal did not follow through as the German government vetoed it. The Carnation Revolution saw the fall of the Portuguese government in April 1974. The new government sought to give independence to its colonies. Portugal withdrew its G.91 squadrons from Guinea after it gained independence in 1974. Its forces also left Mozambique. One of the G.91 squadrons was temporarily deployed to Angola in late 1974 to stop fighting between rival National Liberation Front of Angola forces and the National Union for the Total Independence of Angola. The squadron was eventually withdrawn to Portugal in January 1975. In 1976, the second purchase of 14 G.91 AR/3s and 7 G.91 T/3 trainers was made from Germany. They were followed by other aircraft when the G.91 was withdrawn from Luftwaffe from 1980 to 1982, giving a total of 70 R/3s and 26 T/3s, although not all of these entered services, with many being broken up for spare parts. During the early 1980s, the G.91 R/3 was replaced in German service by the Dassault Dornier Alpha jet, which operated in the same role. The last G.91 aircraft were officially retired in Germany in 1982. Portugal finally phased out the last of its G.91s in 1993. In 1995, the last G.91 in Italy was phased out and retired. The design. The all-metal fuselage uses conventional and straightforward construction methods. It's a semi-monocoque design that is made up of 3 sections. Before being riveted to the center fuselage, the forward section is made separately from the rest. It contains radio navigation and communication equipment, such as a radio direction locator, transponder and ultra-high frequency radio, and identification friend or foe. There are usually 3 cameras in the nose. The cockpit is located directly above the engine's chin-mounted intake. The cockpit is protected by steel armor plating on 3 sides and a glass windshield. The center fuselage section houses the armament bay, which is set beneath the cockpit, and the 7 split fuel tanks, protected against damage from ground fire by armor plating. The armament bay can accommodate up to 4 12.7mm M2 Browning machine guns with 300 ammo per gun or up to 2 30mm DEFA cannons. Other munitions included various rockets and bombs. Gun pods and external drop tanks can be installed on hardpoints fitted on the wing. Both weapons and ammunition in the armament bay were mounted on panel doors, which could be easily removed and quickly swapped by 2 men during rearming on the ground. In addition, various access panels are incorporated to enable simple field maintenance duties to be readily performed on the type. The G.91 is equipped with a swept wing, which uses an all-metal 2-spar structure. The outer panels can all be detached for transportation or easy replacement, while the center section is integral to the fuselage. It is swept at a 37-degree angle at quarter chord with a thickness-to-chord ratio of 10%. The wing features single-slotted flaps and hydraulically actuated ailerons. The tailplane is electrically actuated and has irreversible hydraulic elevators fitted with an artificial feel system, hydraulically actuated air brakes, and a drogue parachute located at the base of the rudder for rapid deceleration. Fiat developed purpose-built ground support equipment for easy and rapid aircraft servicing to carry out operations from austere airstrips. The equipment needed to inspect, maintain, resupply, and repair the G.91 was designed to possess minimal weight and size to facilitate transportation. Fiat also completed a study to add hooks onto the aircraft for compatibility with arresting gear and aircraft catapult for further increased short-field performance. Different variants were produced right from the start of G.91 production. Still, the aircraft's basic design remained virtually unchanged throughout almost the entire production run. The significant difference is that the R-Series aircraft were single-seaters, while the T-Series aircraft had 2 seats. The T-Series aircraft had a slightly longer fuselage to accommodate the extra seat. Technical data: Aeritalia G.91R. Type: single-seat ground combat and reconnaissance aircraft. Engine: a Bristol Siddeley Orpheus 803 turbojet, built by Fiat, with 2,268 kilograms thrust. Performance: maximum speed at sea level 1,075 kilometers per hour. Average sustained speed at 1,520 meters, altitude 1,086 kilometers per hour. Most economical cruise speed 650 kilometers per hour. Initial climb speed 30.5 meters per second. Service ceiling 13,100 meters. Combat radius 320 kilometers. Range 1,850 kilometers. Weight: empty weight 3,100 kilograms. Maximum takeoff weight 5,500 kilograms. Dimensions: wingspan 8.56 meters, length overall 10.30 meters, height overall 4.00 meters. Wings 16.42 square meters. This was the Aviafly podcast. We would be pleased about your like and your subscription because this is the only way we can continue to offer you exciting podcasts from the world of aviation. See you soon!